Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Resilient Mind podcast with Andrew and Steve. I'm Steve Nathanson, here with my good friend, Andrew Marangoni. Andrew, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing very well today. It's a nice, warm spring morning, even though it's going to get cold again, but, roll with the punches.
That's right. That's right. And it is coming soon. Spring is definitely on the horizon, as we actually were just talking about. And I want to introduce our guest because we have a wonderful conversation that's going to happen today. So with that, our guest is Megan Richey. And Megan, we are so happy to have you. We're thankful that you joined us. And if it's all right with you, we're going to let you introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, thanks, Steve and Andrew, for having me today. Good morning from the Pacific Northwest. My name is Megan, and I am a longtime resident of a small town called Ferndale, Washington. We're about 2 hours north of Seattle. And I am back in my hometown after several years abroad as I pursued my professional soccer career. Post-college graduation, and came back home, got married, started a family, and operate a 5,000 square foot training facility where we work with everyone from students through our aging population. But my specialty is with our student athletes, primarily soccer players, my natural niche there, and just working with them to figure out how to be the best soccer player that they can be, directly performance related, but also helping them develop some serious life skills that are going to have a big payoff as they enter college and adulthood. So that's a little brief intro, kind of what we do here.
Excellent. I love it. Student athletes hold a special place in my heart. I think that what you do is phenomenal, and the facility you have is a gorgeous facility, actually, if you don't mind me saying. So actually, with that, if you don't mind, I'm curious to perhaps focus on the main population you work with, the student athletes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Is there a commonality that you find in them, like the major thing that you work with those student athletes to really kind of harness the resilience around? Do you find a commonality with your folks that you work with?
Yeah, I think a big common theme that I find is, and no matter what age that I'm working with, is developing, like, as we'll refer to, like the resilient mindset, right? That they have the ability to really overcome whatever negative thing that enters into their little playing world, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, all the ages in the development process as a soccer player are very unique, but the commonality is that at each stage, they hit like their level of, okay, I haven't experienced this either challenge in the competition or this resistance from a coach, or learning how to have those conversations. And so it's been a real privilege to walk with a lot of kids as they mature as well. And we teach them how to take ownership of their own development rather than it being parent driven. And so, most recently working with one young girl who's in middle school, and she's been having a little bit of difficulty with a nagging injury, nothing that's keeping her out of playing, but it's definitely kind of wearing on her. And we're having a conversation, and I was like, hey, like, how much of this does your coach know? Right? She's a very quiet girl, shows up, puts in the work, but I kind of started to feel, I was like, maybe the coach isn't aware, right? And she's also at that age where it's no longer the parent who should be doing all the communication. And so I said, hey, we got to have this conversation, coach. And so, aside from our physical training we do in our short session, we entered into another layer of coaching conversation of, here's a couple options of how the conversation could go and which one are you comfortable with. So that's like an example of the coaching beyond just the strength and performance development, where we're really teaching how to take ownership of what they need, so that as they hit harder and harder obstacles or opposition, that they're going to have the confidence and have built that resiliency at a young age to be able to manage the harder stuff, for sure.
Yeah. I love it for two big reasons. The first of which is I do firmly believe, and as sport coaches or trainers like yourself in that industry, it's important to not only develop them, but as athletes, but also as people, right? We're in the business of building people, not just athletes. And the mindset piece of that is significant. How to have these conversations, how to feel comfortable even approaching that conversation with your coach, and the mindset on the field in competition, as I think you were hinting at a little bit earlier as well. Let's say your player is a striker at a forward, and they're coming against a defensive back who is very talented on the other team, and they may believe is more talented than them. They could defeat themselves before they even try to make a move, thinking that there's no way I can possibly get past this person. So the mental game is huge. And I do think that there has been a distinct shift over the past couple of decades to really embrace that. There are some coaches who don't yet, that I've spoken to, unfortunately, but I think that it is recognized that we have to build athletes as people, and we have to focus just as much on the mental as the physical as well. So I really appreciate sharing what you brought out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. To that, actually, do you have a method or preferred way in which that you help these young athletes really embody who they are and have that mental resilience that you were talking about?
Yeah, I think a lot of, I would say like the system or whatever is a pretty natural system, and a lot of intuition as well in my coaching that I use through building relationships and more longevity, right? We don't just bring the kid in and dump them back out. It's like, hey, when we're kind of taking in new students and we're assessing, are you here for the long haul? Do you really want to see this through? Whether it's, being confident in making the high school varsity team at some point in their high school career, or going on to play collegiately. And so we are definitely not a place for every single athlete. And so we nurture that a lot, and we're very mindful about how and who we work with as well. But one of the points that I always look for and try to do with the kids is pull out, like where do you struggle when you're in the game? Like, what is the hardest thing for you? And or if they're having a difficult time telling me like what they do well, it's a big red flag.
Yeah.
Right. And so we start to work through just in conversation, and then I will give them we'll do situational things as well. So I'll add in if there's a point where I feel like we need to have a bit of a breakthrough, and we might have dialogue. I might have dialogue with the parents too. Hey, what have you noticed when you've watched, your child play that they're lacking? If they don't seem to quite get into tackles very hard, they seem a little timid, I might create an environment and we'll do skill training at that point. And I'll set it up for them. I say, we're going to train this in repetition so that you gain confidence, so that when we go in at speed, in game mode, that you're going to have one singular focus this game, and you're going to get into one solid tackle. And when you come back next week, I want you to report back and let me know how it felt. I don't care if they came out with the ball. I don't care, exactly the outcome, but I want to know, were you proud of yourself? Did it make you feel empowered? And have them self-identify what the result was of doing something they kind of have known they've been hesitant to do.
Yeah.
So just working, helping them set one small game goal, and then also training goals when they're with their teams is a big
Excellent
strategy, I guess I would use.
Yeah. And Andrew, we talk about that all the time, right? This taking it one small step at a time.
Yeah. And I also like the idea of using the environment to set up a specific thing that you're working on, with repetition to give clarity to it. And then also touching with the feelings of success, or, the confidence level of what you did, how did it make you feel? How can you be in the game now?
Yeah. One big thing too, I've noticed as we introduce strength training with these kids, even at a young age, that direct translation into how they feel in a game. And we talk about that point a lot. Like I make a very intentional effort to bring up, hey, you've been able to increase the amount of weight that you use, even if it's ever so little, right? Look, you're doing more in your squat now. Have you noticed that when you've been playing? Have you been getting knocked over less? Or, have you been able to strike the ball a little bit farther or more accurately? And, hey, this is what happens when we strength train. So then we're making the connection and ties to like, oh my gosh, this is why this additional component of my training is so important. This is how strength training positively impacts and strengthens the mental capacity, so that when it's in the last minute of the game or a tournament, when you have overtime, whatever is going on, that you've put in the work, you've done the hard stuff. And so now when you're having that reward of play and the game, I can go 5 more minutes. I can do this. And it's actually interesting. It comes from memories from my personal athletic development as well, and my mentality that I took into play and took very seriously as a young athlete. It's interesting to me. I don't quite understand, because I don't believe this was ever trained in me in the beginning. Like, it was a very innate thing. And I remember doing like bike workouts, just additional conditioning. I was always like, how can I just be more fit? And I would get on the bike and I'd do these interval sprints. And I would push so hard. And while I was doing it, all I was picturing was like that player that was better than me, either not doing their workout, or if they were, I was doing it a little bit harder and a little bit longer. So that when I went up against that player on the team I knew I was playing against next weekend, I was, instead of being like, oh gosh, like I know this player's a little bit better than me, like now I'm like, oh my gosh, even if they are better than me, like I've trained hard for this and I'm going to be able to rise to the occasion. So I take that and the strength that it gave me as a young athlete to help these kids I work with start to understand what they're capable of if they buy into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I really like what you're saying there, is that you used vision in your process, as you envisioned yourself out competing your competition, and you used and held on to that through your practice and into your play, and that gave you a competitive edge. That's what I heard anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's so much truth to that. And we saw a lot of that going on in these past Olympic games for the Winter Games. And we've seen it in the Olympics before as well, but you see professional athletes at the top of their game using visioning techniques right before they're going to compete. They're going to be running through what that routine looks like. In downhill, for instance, when you don't have that opportunity to see that course, you can envision, how am I going to handle certain turns? How sharp are they? What's the angle of the pitch? We can help prepare ourselves for actually tackling that when it happens by that visioning technique. And more to your point that you're getting at, Megan, one of the things I really love about it is, if you watch The Last Dance, which is a phenomenal ESPN series on the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan, and then even the Michael Phelps kind of memories on NBC. It's on Peacock now. I think it's like Michael Phelps Medals, Memory, and More, if I remember the title correctly. In each of those documentaries, they share insights from Michael Jordan and Michael Phelps and what they did mentally to rise above their competition. Michael Jordan was very good at psyching himself up mentally by things that people said, or creating things that people said, or creating something about a player on another team to do exactly what you've talked about, to train harder, to push harder, to be better in that game and beat that individual one-on-one. And the same thing with Michael Phelps, that drive that's there, envisioning out touching somebody. There's so much value in doing that. And then the last thing I'll share on that is I do that a lot in my own training as well. When I go out and run and I think about winning a race, winning an Ironman, competing in the Olympics, even things that I have as lofty potential goals, whether they turn out or not, the effect is the same, because every single time that I picture that, I run faster. And so actually that's a challenge I would throw out to people who are listening is if you do run or if you're bike, the next time that you're doing that on a workout, picture some incredible goal that you think has so much power and meaning for you and watch how it lifts you up. There is so much power in the mental game that it's left untapped if we don't leverage it.
Yeah, I mean, using that in all aspects of what you do, whether it's athletic or business, as entrepreneurs, business related, coaching, everything. It's taking that, and after you experience the outcome of it and just how powerful it is and what it's driven you to do in the past and what you've achieved because of that practice, is believing that it has that power in different realms. And that was a huge challenge for me after retiring and then shifting into what I do now, and kind of resetting goals and dreams, but then being like, what was like a best practice that really drove me to become the level of athlete that I was? Yeah. And how can I manipulate that now to be one of the best trainers, one of the best leaders within my organization, and so it's been a really fun journey. And I'm so thankful for my athletic background and the level that I pursued and the seriousness that I put in intention to just set me up for life now.
Yeah. To that, actually, I'd love to dig in a little bit more, and I'll kind of give you dealer's choice, if you will, in terms of whether it's the athletic career that you've had, whether it's the business that you now run. I'm curious what you found really helped you create the resilience that you have now and how it came about. Like I said, either in athletics or in your business, kind of dealer's choice of which way you want to go.
Yeah, I think a big part of it starts with being very confident in your identity, right? I'm very strong in my faith and know that ultimately I am the daughter of the Lord Most High, and like nothing I do will change that, right? And I also believe that like He gave me just an incredible mind and athletic ability, and also I think some of the resilience that I have, what is a gift from Him, because my story, like many people, is crazy on what level of resilience it seemed I needed to endure and to keep going forward. And so for me, when it was some really, really trying times as an athlete, being able to go back and remind myself of who I am at the root of my being, instead of allowing my performance to define my identity, gave me a lot of the strength and resilience that I needed to keep pursuing what I was doing. When I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do people do this without having a really strong faith? Because it is really, really hard. But it was interesting that like you had invited me on your show, and And resilience is like the key word and phrase, right? And I remember I was driving. I have a very, very short drive from my house to my facility, and it's very beautiful. I crossed the river over this old bridge, and then off to my left is Mount Baker, covered in snow right now, and it's usually, just a beautiful time of morning. And this morning I was talking to my mom on the phone quickly, and it was during something difficult I was going through now, directly related to business. And I was just explaining kind of what was going on, letting her know, hey, just so you know, I'm going through some stuff. And she actually used that word resilient. Like, her words, like, I just am so impressed with how resilient you are to these things that keep being thrown at you, and you remain true to who you are and what you've been called to do. And so that was a really powerful statement, from her. So I think that network to your support system, my parents have always been that as well for my entire life, of also those reminders of hey, like, you're strong, you've been through a lot, and look at every time that's happened, what's been the result, like the beauty in the fight, right? And so now every time I go into something, I'm like, well, it can't be any worse than this time.
Yeah.
They just kind of stack up on each other, and you gain confidence, and you're more pliable, and resilience, the ability to bounce back and reshape, and everything is so true.
Yeah. And Jude was just agreeing with you, actually. he and there's a valid point in, we can very much question who we are when things get tough and what we're capable of doing. And as Andrew and I've talked about a lot in this episode, or in the episodes that we've done, is it's very natural. That's okay, because it matters what we do with that thought and how we handle it. It happens to all of us. And there's comfort in that we're not alone in that struggle. We're not alone in those kind of thoughts. But to your point, what defines the people who have that kind of success that you've had, who harness the resilience, is what we choose to do with those thoughts and how we combat it. This is who I am. This is what I am capable of. And here's what I've done before in the past that supports that. And there's value in also having that support structure in place, the people around us. I firmly believe, as a coach, one of the most powerful things we can do is believe in somebody when they don't believe in themselves. And so I think there's an important piece of that puzzle to have that support structure, like you are providing for those athletes that you work with, like your parents were providing for you. So there's a lot of wisdom in there. Jude has heard all of that before as well. So just coming in the way he does and saying, yes, I agree, Dad.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the most beautiful things about doing what I do now. I'm going to say especially, but additionally, as I work with the adult population.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm also a personal trainer and do personal training with just adults and getting better health, fitness. But what happens as a result, as you guys have probably seen as well, is that these people enter like not believing in themselves, right? They're very broken at times, and we're here to meet them in that, and we know that, right? And it's why we do what we do. And then seeing them like emerge and do things, and they see themselves do things that are physically, several months ago, impossible in their world. And just this morning, before I came on with you guys, we had one of our clients, and I looked out the window. There's an adult class, a small group fitness going on while I was working with the high schoolers. And I look out the window, and the class is just doing a small like jog lap around in the front outside. And I almost wanted to start crying, because majority of the people in that class, when they first came to us, they couldn't run. Right? Running's not a huge part of what we do and how we train, but just a quick, minute warm up little thing, like that was too much.
Yeah.
And those same people we've seen leave jobs that were unfulfilling and find a deeper calling in their life. And it's just a story over and over and over. And it's using, again, like the story of things that I faced and overcome and pushed through to kind of put that onto them and project that, like, this is possible for your life at the level you want it to be. And so it's just really cool to get to do that. And then additionally, two of my trainers were originally clients as well.
Oh, that's cool.
And they've made complete career changes, and are finding just so much fulfillment and purpose in coming in here every day and serving people. And I have the joy of leading them and helping them grow. And that's really, really cool to see.
Yeah. You know, we're actually, I think, naturally branching into the last question that we like to ask. And I'll ask Andrew to step in once we start talking about this, because I think it's a question he came up with that is a really good question. And it's around, what does a transformative world look like for you? Because I think you're starting to really outline the transformations that you do help create and the impact that you're having. So I was wondering if you'd be willing to speak about that a little bit more in terms of, you know, what is this transformative world that you would want to create and are creating?
Yeah. We'll go back to the student focus again, okay, to wander, but and then we can touch back on kind of how I was talking about the adults. But in my student world, a lot of times, I just like what I love to see happen and see frequently is when the student comes in and you can tell they're reserved, they haven't quite figured out their voice. I see a lot of myself in those types of kids when I was their age too. But you can tell that they want it, right? Like they don't understand or quite believe that they have it. And I just want so badly to see systems transformed in like athlete development. So let's use soccer specifically. So in a youth soccer player like development system within, say, like a club structure, right, where you have these different tiers of team. You have A, B, C team, for example, right? And one of my favorite, I shouldn't use the word favorite, but I really enjoy working with like the B and C team level kids. When you get them in, they're raw, they're a little bit beat down because, well, I'm not as good as, you know, and they might not be taught how they could rise or if they even want to, and then how to set those goals, right? And so it doesn't seem like too much of that coaching is happening within the club structure to really support the maturity and growth in the mindset of achieving next level of play. It's more, you know, of course, it's going to be like, you're just that team focused success, right? Yeah. And so just that the transformative world for me in youth soccer development is that I get, you know, a B team player come in and they're able to verbalize, be like, I want to make the A team. And I know that it's possible. Like there aren't all these, you know, political barriers in place and this and that happening. And what do I need to do to make that happen? Right. Because the coaches within that organization have now understood how important it is that they coach that in addition to their skill development. I don't know if that is clarifying enough in that response, kind of what we're looking for there. But it's kind of what gets me jazzed up is when I get that phone call or text from a parent of, you know, so-and-so, you know, leveled up on what team they're on.
Yeah. Right.
But at the same time, not putting that pressure on the kid, like, hey, you can say if you want this, like, and are you not saying you want to do this because you're afraid that you're not going to make it? Let's work through that little thing right there. And then, okay, you do have the confidence to set that, but I want you to know, like, you're doing everything in your control to be ready and prepared to show. But at the end of the day, it's not your choice, right? It's a biased opinion of a coach who most likely knows what they're doing. And now it's my job as your coach and your support system to walk with you through either the disappointment of not hitting that goal. And that's where we're going to build. I mean, sometimes it's such a blessing when that happens, because now we hit that resilience point.
Yep.
Now we're truly starting to build. And it's like, you know what? It's okay. What did we learn from it? Are you going to keep working hard, or are you going to just give up now and you just decide you don't really care? And it's this whole process and conversation, you know, to decide what's next year's, you know, target and why do you want it?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what I heard from you is creating transformational leadership, is being responsible for creating like bringing out the potential in the ones you lead. And that's the definition I use for leadership. And I absolutely love it, because it's not about how great you are. It's about how great you make others and rise to the occasion, become resilient, become confident, and empower them to be the best that they can be. And that's beautiful. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements in there that I think echo what we've talked about today as a whole. I think there's the mastery on all fronts, not just the physical, but also the mental side of it. The application that's not just there in sport, but also in everything in life, right? When we build a skill set in one area, we're also able to build that skill set in other areas of life or apply it there. Even if we don't necessarily initially see though, say one-on-one transfer, those skill sets that we build in athletics that are harnessing our resilience, our mindset, how we even say, take something one small step at a time to build those skills and tackle that challenge, can be applied in business, as you were noting as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much power in, we build confidence in ourselves primarily through experience, and having someone help guide us to take those small steps, to have the courage to do that step, and then see someone, right, who couldn't even run, now be able to run as a warm-up. It is an incredible thing to watch and have that facilitate. But it's also incredible for us mentally as well as individuals, because what we once thought was impossible is now happening, and what was once now out of reach is just within our grasp, and we can take it even further to that next level as we continue to build, grow, redefine that cycle, and retake that cycle to get to where we want to go, that next level that we never thought was possible, because it was so far off. So there's a lot of things that I think that I've really appreciated you bringing out today. So I want to say thank you again as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. To that, actually, one maybe wrap up question, if you will, if you were to hone in on a couple key few points for our listeners to take away from today, what would those be?
Great question. Bring the focus in. So, you know, a really important part that I have a difficult time with, but I know how important it is. So I almost like make myself do it, is starting really small. After, if I have a big vision or a big goal, then I have to figure out how to do the small step consistently. And then from there, I need to have purpose behind those steps, because I hate wasting time.
Yeah.
So if there isn't purpose in what I'm committing to doing, then it's not going to last very long, right? And that's why, you know, we say, hey, like, why are you doing this? You know, someone comes in, why do you want to start working out here? And if they aren't sure, well, hey, maybe not ready, or can we help you kind of unearth that? Or do we get started and see, and, intentionally find why. So setting a small step for yourself to get going, making sure you understand why you're committing to that step. And then 3 is circling back and assessing, am I ready to move to my next step? If so, what is it? And you could have an outline before, but making sure that you're staying focused on that. I have pretty severe ADHD, and so staying focused on what is, I'll go and like brainstorm everything, right? But I've really had to train hard to take the step that I'm in and be in it and not try to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Even though I know where I want to get with it. So just being patient in the process.
Yeah. Small steps, focus, and patience.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Andrew, what about you? I'm actually curious for your thoughts as well. What would you perhaps leave our listeners with as summary points, if you will?
Well, I love doing this podcast. And one of the reasons I love it so much is because we have these stories from different people all over the nation and sometimes the world. And they all revolve around basically what you just said, is that success starts with, identifying the vision and giving it purpose, and then what are the small achievable steps of getting there every day. And I was talking to one of my coaches, and I was like, as storytellers about life and all that other stuff, is we tend to want to focus on big transformative events. Is I did this thing, it was super cool, but when we're writing our story, we don't talk about the day in, day out little steps that it took to get there.
Right.
In storybooks of adventures, they're like, well, we spent 5 chapters walking to the next destination. No one writes those chapters because it was just, observation of small steps being taken. Nothing exciting happened, but they were absolutely necessary to get to the next point. So that is, don't underestimate the daily small committed action. That's what leads to confidence. That's what leads to success. And you have to stay committed. And if you are having trouble staying committed, get back to the why. Is there a reason why you're doing it? And if you're not doing it, is there a reason why you're not doing it? Maybe it's not your purpose.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to reevaluate that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing saying that you have to do anything.
Yeah.
Choose what you get to do and do it.
Yeah, definitely. And on that point, with revisiting your purpose and when you stay committed, is actually kind of the climax of when I decided I was done playing, right? I'm really thankful that I was in the position where it wasn't a serious injury related, a forced retirement type thing. I was reevaluating, am I still living and is my why driving me enough to do it? And kind of that fire had died pretty hard, pretty quick, right? And it was no longer that it was more of this grind that it was not bringing joy. And I was coaching as well, simultaneously, and I would leave coaching so fulfilled and so that had a lot of purpose behind it. I impacted a life, it was connection, and it wasn't performance driven necessarily, on my end. But it was a really hard realization to come to, because it, that combination of kind of giving up on a dream in a way and realizing a new one. But it's so true now that I'm living in my new purpose, my new calling. And it happened at a very young age of having that transition, but another level of building resilient mind and and then being able to coach others through that process.
Love it. Megan, we'll definitely have to have you on again, because I very selfishly am interested in talking about much more of your story. But in the meantime, if people are interested to learn more about you, to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Yeah, there's not too much going on. No, just kidding. You know, we have our typical social media platforms. Instagram, you can do at Coach Megan M, MEGAN M, and not super active on my account right now. But coming up, I will have my first book released in the next few months. So if you follow me there, you'll be able to get updates as far as when you'll be able to purchase that book and learn more of the story. Go into quite a bit of detail about a lot of the events in my career that built this resilience. And then you can also follow our business and what we do here at Manthe Momentum. So I'm sure we'll put that in the notes
You can do that for you.
and kind of see what's going on. So
Excellent. Megan, thank you truly. I am very thankful and grateful, not only that we are connected, but also that you're willing to come on and share a little bit about you and your story and your facility and what you do with folks, with Andrew and I today. So thank you truly.
Yeah, thank you so much for just the platform and opportunity to share. And again, another step for me, getting out of my comfort zone and practicing what I preach. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Love it.
Yes, it was fantastic meeting you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, and your vision. And it's a beautiful one. Student athletes definitely are shaping the world as they grow. And, you know, being on a team, I think, is an important part of being young, and learning the skill sets that you learn just being on a team, whatever team that is. So get involved. If you're a young person, get involved in sports, because there's more to just the physical aspects of it.
Right.
Yeah. Stay involved.
And to that, I think we'll leave with the saying that we always say. I love that momentum is in the name of your business, because Andrew, what do we always say at the end?
Be the movement in your life.
There you go. So until the next time, everyone, be the movement in your life, and we'll talk to you soon.